Greetings, citizens of the interweb, it's Matt from Hydro Gaming here this week to present a new video showcasing our single-player medieval fantasy RPG that we're creating using the power of the Unreal Engine. In today's episode, which is of course a remake of the original episode 4 from a year and a half ago, which was completely unwatchable, we're covering the character creation system. Oh, and that's me by the way, I have an avatar now. I know, it's pretty mind-blowing stuff. Anyways, as we move through the next few episodes, I'll be showing a mix of footage from what the systems look like when we originally built them, and what the systems look like today, nearly 2 years of development later. With that out of the way, we can jump into today's video. Roll the intro. So if you've seen the original episode 4, you know that we're using the character customization system by mlindborg as a foundation to build off of and make it our own. You know what, I'm probably butchering that name, so we'll just call him Mindborg for now, that's probably easier. Anyways, we'll be using his system as a jumping off point, and this video will cover exactly that. And keep in mind that this is a remake of the original episode 4, so you'll see a lot of old footage from how the game looked before. I mention this because if you've used the character creator system by Mindborg, you'll probably think what you see here looks really weird and different from the system you can get today. That's because we use like version 1.0 of the character creator, and today it's at around version 5. That being said, if you want to look up the asset in the UE4 marketplace for yourself, it might be kind of neat to see how our version of a system has evolved in a different direction, even though they both started off in the exact same place. Beyond that, we'll be covering how we went about replacing our default character mesh with a character that is customizable and how we set that up and got everything integrated. So let's jump into the next chapter and see what all the fuss is about. Okay, so first things first, before we can do anything else, we've got to swap out our character mesh. So at this point in development, I was really kicking myself. This is because I built my original animation blueprint based on the default UE4 mannequin, thinking that it used the same skeleton as the character from Mindborg's pack. It did not. I mean, with the most recent version, the retarget points are pretty much identical to the UE4 mannequin, but back then, the skeletons were pretty different, and when I tried retargeting my new animations from the default skeleton to the custom one, I had a lot of distortion happening. And of course, with the pack being so new back then, paired with the fact that Unreal Engine development was definitely not as mainstream as it is now, there weren't a lot of tutorials to help me out. Luckily, Reddit was there to save the day once again. I ended up getting help from a fellow game developer who walked me through the process of modifying my skeleton to line up with the retarget points on UE4's humanoid rig setup. I mean, looking back now, this is probably something that would take the average Unreal developer a couple minutes to do, but back then, I was a complete greenhorn and had no tutorials. That being said, learning through trial and error along with some help from a very friendly Unreal dev community gives a real sense of accomplishment when you finally fix a bug that's been plaguing your game. And the best part is, if in the future anybody has the same questions I had when I was starting out, I'll be able to help them out. That being said, a lot of my problems were very solvable, I'm just kind of a slow learner, so maybe I'm not the best teacher. But hey, if anybody has any questions in the comments, I'll do my best to answer. Now, if you've seen episode 22, which was a couple years after this point in the game development process, you know that I ended up having to chop up my character mesh into pieces to fix my armor clipping problem. I like to think that my interactions with more experienced game developers are what actually got me to the point of being able to do something like that. And honestly, I owe it to the Unreal Engine developer community on Reddit. There are a lot of really helpful and friendly people on there who offer a lot of help to new developers. If you're thinking of getting started with Unreal Engine, I'll leave a link in the description as I'd highly recommend checking it out. So at this point, our character was all set up and our morph points for facial animation and sculpting were all working properly. Then we had to move to the step of actually making the character customizable. So getting the animations working with the new character was only half the battle. Now we actually had to get the code working so we could customize our custom character, or else, what's the point? Believe it or not, this was actually the easiest part of the whole process because I basically learned how to use Unreal Engine by tinkering with free marketplace assets and learning how to combine them. I mean, to be fair, I'm still doing a lot of that, but just at a much higher level. So, if you are interested in the process, I'll give a quick breakdown of how it went. So, the first thing I do when I'm looking at integrating an asset is learning the asset in and out. This means creating an understanding of all its functions, variables, data tables, blah blah blah. That way, if something goes wrong during the integration, you can reliably track the source of the problem efficiently. So that's what I did. I just kind of spent my time running through each bit of the blueprint and learned how it worked. The most important part of this process was updating all of the character references. For those of you who don't dabble in the world of game creation, I'll break it down a bit more. I won't go full-blown tutorial here, but just for the sake of talking about the design process, I'll do a quick explanation. So first and foremost, in Unreal Engine, a blueprint is the underlying code that makes things happen. A character blueprint, for example, could be set up to tell the character things like whether or not they should attack, or if their current spell is on cooldown. An animation blueprint tells our character what animation should be played based on what variable is triggered. If our character is falling, for example, the variable is falling in our blueprint will be set to true. When this happens, our blueprint knows to tell the engine to play falling animation, which is applied to our character until they hit the ground, at which point the falling variable will be set to false and the falling animation will stop. So when your character blueprint, or visual coding spaghetti as it's better known, is trying to send or receive information to another blueprint, it needs a reference to do so. This reference basically represents the thing that the blueprint is affecting. For example, let's say I want to make my character's nose bigger. When I do this, my base character customizer blueprint needs a reference to the character I'm modifying. Basically, it needs me to say, the character the player is controlling is the one whose nose I want to customize, i.e. we're referencing the player character. And you could in theory reference any character on the map and customize them, but for our purpose, we just want to modify the character we're working on. It would make for a cool spell though. Imagine walking around the game world and casting ugly on unsuspecting civilians. But yeah, like I said, I need a reference to the character I'm modifying, and then beyond that, I need a reference to the morph point on the character that needs to be resized. In this case, it would be the ones affecting the nose, given that I want to change the size of the nose. If you're an experienced Unreal Engine developer, this probably all sounds extremely elementary, but keep in mind I was just starting out at this point and had no idea what I was doing for most parts of the game design process. Hence the pride I felt when I finally found a problem that I could actually solve on my own. And with that, our character customizer was officially working and ready for its UI redesign. A redesign that wouldn't happen for another year and a half. So if you've seen the most recent episode of Knightwatch, which at the time of recording was episode 22, you know that we've created a section for suggestions. I got a lot of helpful suggestions and advice, and we'll be going over some of those in detail in episode 23. But if you do have any ideas for things you'd like to see added to the game, the way it works is if you post it here in the comments and your idea gets selected, not only will you receive a shoutout, but I'll name either an NPC or a weapon in the game after you. For the first round of shoutouts, you can look forward to those in episode 23. FYI, we're gonna start naming some NPCs after commenters, so, give me your best ideas and you can tell your friends you're in a video game. Speaking of shoutouts, this week's developer shoutout isn't technically someone who's developing a game per se, as far as I know, but rather the person whose videos helped me learn Unreal Engine in the first place. That would be Virtus Learning Hub on YouTube. On his channel, he creates easy to follow tutorials for beginner developers. He covers simple things like making characters attack, adding health bars and stamina bars, and much more. Taking a look at his homepage on YouTube, it looks like he recently started a tutorial on making a survival game in Unreal Engine. If that's something you think you might be interested in, then be sure to give his channel a look and click that big ol' red button. You know the one. And that's all I've got for you this week. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Knightwatch A Journey, and if you found any of this entertaining or informative, please consider subscribing, dropping a like, and commenting down below something you'd love to see added to the game. Like I said before, if your idea gets selected, not only will you receive a shoutout, but I'll name either an NPC or a weapon in the game after you. Anyways, until next time, have a good one, and we'll see you in the next video.